All right, Spain. Yeah, so I left Madrid and Gibraltar. I went to like some town called Valencia or something, which is really interesting because they have this big river that's really wide, but it was totally dry. And you could tell that it hadn't had water. Like you could tell it was a huge river because it was a huge riverbed. And inside the riverbed was like a whole park of trees and paths and stuff. But you could tell it hadn't had water in it for like hundreds of years because it was it was like park in the middle of the riverbed. That's kind of interesting. So I got there and I took a bus just all around the whole city. Just did the whole loop just to look at the city because I was used to like checking out the city from when I was bike touring. And then I went into Barcelona and stayed in a hostel there. It was interesting. It was like in a big kind of high-rise building, like multi-level hostel, and lots of different bunks in a room. And in the room, they had like a party room, like a hangout room where you could get beers out of a vending machine. So it was like all the hostel people, and there were like 100 people staying there. We're all like partying there. It was really cool. And so I think I was hanging out with like various people or something. And it was right next to the pedestrian mall, which was really interesting because they had all these street performers at the pedestrian mall who would like dress up like in different like masks and dress in like gold and silver and like act really like be just still, or then they'd have people like doing different performances and stuff and then ask for money. And one interesting thing about Spain is like they would actually actively ask for money, like, okay, pay me, and run around and be like, come on, and whereas they weren't quite as aggressive as the street performers in America. But I did, and then I noticed there was lots of intense uh, um, architecture there too. The buildings are really lots of architecture. And I did the tour of some like, what was his name? Some famous, two famous Spanish architects museums. One was on this edge of the town next to where the cable car goes up, and I didn't do the cable car at the top because it was too much. And then I did some botanical garden thing. I did like the bus tour of the town. It's a pretty city, but there was no beach. I didn't see a beach. It was just ports. And one night I went to a disco with some of the kids, some like English kids or something, American kids, and I was talking to some Spanish girl who was like, "We don't speak Spanish here. We speak Catalan. It's different from Spanish. It's not Spanish." I was like, "Oh wow, that's interesting. I thought you all spoke Spanish." And okay, so then I took the bus, and I should have gone to Andorra because it was a new country, and I should have checked it out just because it was another country, but I didn't. I went into Monaco, and I stayed at a hostel there, and I saw some Australian kids that I walked around the town with, and tried to get into the famous casino. I was 23, but they weren't old enough, so they couldn't get in. So I was like, all right, I won't get in. I kind of had some drinks or something with them on the port, and it was an interesting place because they have like, it was like one big city, and they'd have all the buildings just and apartment buildings and stuff just built way up on the cliff, way up high. It was pretty, really built up, and they all spoke French. It was like being in France again, and it was expensive. It was like $8 for a Big Mac meal, for a McDonald's meal, which is expensive. And then I did the tour of their aquarium, which was some like world-class aquarium. It was the first time I've seen live coral. That was interesting. And then I took the bus, or no, the train. I'm taking the train into, what was it called? I can't remember what it was called, but it was where Christopher Columbus comes from. And I even saw the house where he grew up. It was right in like the middle of town right there. And it's still a house right there. Like, this is his house that they were like not touching. It was just it was crazy. Right in some like intersection in the middle of the town. And I got a pizza, and I sat down, and they said, "Oh, that's going to be extra." And some Italian guy's like, "Oh yeah, here in Italy, you have to pay extra if you're going to eat inside." I was like, "Huh, that's weird." It's like, yeah. And then I took a bus way up, all these switchbacks, up to some youth hostel, which was a hostel seasonally, because I guess normally it's college kid dorm rooms. And but it was pretty because I looked down, I saw the ocean way below me and the town way below me, and then I took the bus back down, and I kind of walked around that town that day. I think I stayed in that place twice. I was hanging out with some American kids there. And it was Italy was kind of like Spain or Portugal, just quaint, little like hole in the wall type stores where you'd get stuff. But it was really expensive. I got some like Adidas pants or some kind of just shorts for like $30 or something. I was like, wow. And then I took the bus or the train into Pisa, and I looked on the side and I saw these huge mountains. It was beautiful. I was thinking, oh man, I should have ridden my bike through Italy. Italy would have been the best place to ride a bike through. And I did Pisa. Pisa was pretty. They had a nice river there, and buildings, beautifully painted buildings. Really much better kept. Italy is much better kept than Spain or Portugal. And I saw the Leaning Tower of Pisa, which was pretty, and all the people selling little Leaning Tower of Pisas right next to some really pretty like old building. And then I went into Florence, and was talking to some American girl on the train there, and she brought me to some cool hostel she knew about, and went there, and they had so I was hanging out with some people there, some Australian guy who I did the tour of the town with the next day, but they had a movie theater in the basement of this hostel that you could all see movies with the big screen, which was cool. And so I did the tour with some Australian guy who was really into Pisa, knew everything about it, or Florence, and I guess they're the Ferenzi family, or the Medici family. And I saw that's where they had all the museums of all of like Da Vinci's like sculptures and stuff lining something, and there was this big church that was mind-blowingly intricately painted and carved, and I guess the oldest building in all of Italy was right in front of it, some octagon-shaped building. It was not very big. It was like 1,000 years old, and you could see on the top there was like the buildings were connected, and this kid told me that the Medicis could actually, in their carriage, could travel from building to building all throughout the city, on the top of the city, on the top of the buildings, between the buildings, like in case there was a rebellion, they could escape and get anywhere without having to worry about anybody. And I saw some amazing artwork in the Medici family area, which is like a park. It's just huge estate. I went from the top, some big building, and that was pretty. And I noticed all the cypress trees there, which is pretty. Then I went into Rome, and I stayed in some huge Roman youth hostel that had a big kind of cafeteria-like place where we'd have lunch. So that was fun because you could get alcohol there and hang out with all the other kids there. And I went and did the tour of the place and saw, I guess, some old castle in the Vatican. In the Vatican Dome, you can actually go around the outside of the dome and look down from the top, and all of the marble, which is beautiful, and their little backyard too. And the Colosseum and the river and the Circus Maximus, which I was fascinated with because I knew all about it from my classes. And the Circus Maximus was still right there, just grass, and you could even see the part of the bleachers were still there from the Circus Maximus. And one of the bridges across to the island and the Tiber River was still there. The 2,000-year-old Roman bridge was still there, not functioning as a bridge, but still standing. And the island was all buildings now. Nothing was really old from old Rome there, and the aqueducts were amazing, everywhere, still there, built into the buildings. And actually taking the train in, I could see the aqueducts along the train for like 60 miles out, all coming in. I'd love to go back to Rome. And the baths also were huge. Like imagining the baths back in those days when it was still rooms, and like the arches of the inside of the baths were like 50, 60 feet high, it seemed like. It was huge. And the bath itself was really big. It wasn't really deep, but it was huge, and it was intricately mosaicked still. And then all the other little baths, it would have been mind-blowing back in the day. Beautiful, especially for the, primitive people who would visit Rome. And one interesting thing about Rome was they still had rubble everywhere from the columns and stuff laying all over the place. Yeah, I saw the hill also. The central area, like the Senate, it's like a lot smaller than I thought it would be, and it was like all compact. Circus Maximus, Colosseum, the Forum was all right there, and then they'd have the buildings in the Forum, which were like 3 stories. It was like multi-story, and then they had a building there. I'll do Rome next time because this